recently in Ankara, to the north of Iraq, the operation was launched, and we also talked about details regarding the operation during our presidential meeting. First of all, I would like to state that I pray for the mercy of God on the souls of our three soldiers martyrized and all 13 citizens abducted and then killed by the murderer terrorists. Turkey has been a country that suffered from terrorism strongly for more than 30 years, and as the state, we tried to dry out the swamp of terrorism. Fighting against political issues and being drowned in the political chaos was indeed marked by terrorist uh, attacks. In 1980s in particular, both civilians, the law enforcement officers and soldiers were attacked mercilessly by those murderers during those times, from women to children, from uh, farmers to other civilians, all sections of our society uh, were attacked by that terrorist organization. But our state has tried its best to stop this terror organization, which has become the stooge of external parties for a long time, had turned to itself. But circles that had calculations on Turkey as of 2003 on, using many other tools, reactivated PKK. And during this time, to find the solutions for terrorism, we have taken many steps forward in order to make sure that no blood is shed and mothers don't cry and the children don't lose their parents. We exerted all sorts of efforts sincerely for that end. But despite that, there are some circles who had their sight set on the unity and solidarity of our nation. And with this, the PKK terrorist organization restarted its attacks, especially concentrating on some cities. Their attacks took forms of surrendering various districts, Cizre, Derik, Dargeçit, like districts where incidents unfolded. The We stopped the attacks by the uh, inclusion of our law enforcement officers and bodies. And July the 15th coup attempt followed those attacks, and the attempt revealed the real purpose of the climate that some wanted to create in our country. And in the face of those terrorists and terror attacks, our nation stood tall and embraced its stability, independence, and risked their lives. Only on the night of July the 15th, more than 251 citizens of our country fell martyrs and many were wounded. And to break the terrorist corridor that some wanted to establish by our borderlines, we started many operations. The Euphrates Shield, Olive Branch, and many other operations helped us secure our Syrian border. Beyond our Iraqi border, we saw that the terrorist organizations wanted to infiltrate our country, but to prevent so, we created a permanent bases within and outside our country. During the operations, we lost 401 soldiers, 199 police officers, and 116 security rangers, and totally the number is 1,059. The martyrs, the number of total martyrs. And during the attacks of the terrorists, more than 700 citizens lost their lives and more than 5,000 wounded. and within the country 6,000, outside the country is 6,900 terrorists were neutralized. And during our operations, about 1,300 terrorists were captured, wounded, and more than 1,500 of them captured alive, and 243 terrorists did surrender. This way, the number of the neutralized terrorists increased, and in other words, the circle that the terrorists created, working for long years, was done away with along this course of 5 years. Of course, we would not trade even a single strain of hair of our people for the totality of these terrorists. But when it comes to the stability, independence, and the independence of our country, we know that there are many who will walk to the martyrdom without a single moment of hesitation and fight the terrorists. Dear citizens, I would like to state that every brother, every martyr is, of course, alive. We neither materialize human life as the West, nor do exalt death as terrorist organizations, nor do we hand over the will to certain guiders. In the essence of our civilization, we have the principle that states make the human live, so the state lives on. The night before at UNESCO Yunus Emre program, we remembered and commemorated our great ancestors. They taught us to look into life with putting the human to our core. Our calls for prayers, our homeland, our flag are of our holy values. And when it comes to our holy values and items, we recognize no borders. We have the most well-rooted state tradition of the world, and our history is full of glory, victory. And in line with our belief and values, we struggle, and there are many also who lost their lives as martyrs for our country. And we believe that position, that station of martyrdom, and also becoming a veteran are the most valuable for us. And we do not have the blood of innocent people on our hands, and we will never. In our past, in our history, we do not have a single case of disgrace, of exploiting any other society, and we will never. On our backs, we don't have the hunch to putting the rest of the world into fire for one's own sakes and interests. This is never the history or the legacy we took over from our ancestors, and we will never leave such a history to our young people. Turkey allows policies, and there are some who try to judge Turkey from its policies, but they should know that no one's history is as clear and pure as ours. There are some with their dark histories try to teach us lessons of democracy, rights, and liberties. And I tell them, first look at your image, your reflection on the mirror, and face your own realities. Your ivory towers, in the face of a slightest crisis, smallest crisis, or any wind, do shake from its grounds, and I am sure you are also aware of that. However, when it comes to us, we survived many storms in our thousands years of well-rooted history, and we will endure hardships and survive all those challenges and storms yet again, over and over again, because we have never surrendered to the oppressor and tyrant. We, on the other hand, always embrace the oppressed, and always stood with those who sought after their rights and laws. This is what we did in Syria and Libya. This is what we did in Karabakh, and as well what we did in Somalia and Palestine. This is what we did in Iraq and Bosnia. This is what we did in Cyprus. Ultimately, everywhere we were involved, we depicted the same principled stance. And if for that we had to pay a price, we paid so. And when necessary, we paid the price of that in the form of streets being stirred up, sometimes through chaos, and sometimes terrorist organizations were charged against us. And when necessary, we paid the price with coup attempts, and some other times with economic traps, and some other times by being subject to illegal, illegitimate legal pressures. But never we have surrendered. Never we yielded. We never kneeled. With our nation, with our people, we stood together. We stood great and stood as brothers and sisters, and one by one managed to tackle all the impediments and handicaps laid in front of us. And Turkey looks into its future with more confidence than ever, trusts itself more than ever, and Turkey today is walking towards its target of being regional and global leader, and not in words only. We in action do walk step by step towards our goal. No matter what others say, we have won the hearts of many oppressed and downtrodden in the world. And hopefully, when we achieve our 2023 goals, we will have moved our country way beyond that. My dear brothers and sisters, fight against terrorism is beyond any daily, everyday politics or political rifts, and it is a national subject. It is related with the togetherness, unity, the solidarity of our country, and when it comes to such a critical issue, of course, it's our right to expect the most sincere behaviors by the opposition. And everyone should make a definition of terrorist organizations without using words or phrases such as ifs and ends and buts. Otherwise, no one can present himself as a politician of this country. Just because some do fall short to distance themselves from the PKK, um, and there is a political party that is never recognized as worthy in our eyes. And there is this party that also is reported through documents about their communication. And now the leader of this party is now threatening us just because our communications director had an official contact with a political party. And as the People's Alliance, we tell to those people that our nation only, but only value the lives of our veterans and martyrs, and our nation will hold you accountable for what you have done, and they will teach you such a lesson that no one else later on will be able to even attempt to similar murders. Let's say that these are the proponents of the officially recognized terror organization. How about then CHP? The leader of the party goes out and tells many nonsense words, all of which are of hypocrisy, manipulations, speculations, and whatsoever. And he asks us questions. This person, if this person would be an insane person who spent his life hiding somewhere in the corner, I would understand. But the questions are asked by this leader of CHP. Even though he came to his chair through some tapes, he somehow occupied the leadership chair of CHP this way or other. But despite that, if he is able to ask such questions, we will look for some ulterior motives in what he says. First things first, he is fully not aware how of a despicable structure PKK is, and he has no idea that this terrorist organization is nothing to do with humanity and humane form of living. And this person probably is also not aware how the terror organizations and this terror organization is used as an apparatus across the world, and is not aware, even in the slightest form, how the terrorist organization in question is used as a stooge. From the police to the national defense, from the intelligence agency to the law enforcement. We, by those people, are informed. And apparently, now that the other people do not consider themselves as the members of this great nation, they utter such words. From Libya to Syria, from the Eastern Mediterranean to Nagorno-Karabakh, these people had never owned up to any operation we launched already. But when necessary, we would challenge the whole world. When necessary, we would risk our lives with those great operations. When necessary, we outcried and loudly expressed our power and did all it took. And those who fall short to even call a terrorist organization what it is do show all efforts relentlessly to blame our government. The operations and the struggle that Turkey has against those terror organizations are not supported by these people. On the contrary, they support those terror groups in disguise. And when a sad event unfolds, all they do is but to point their fingers at us in their stance. However, our national defense minister and interior affairs minister visited the person chairing the CHP and also the chairwoman of PARTİ. And our ministers at the Turkish Grand National Assembly informed all the deputies about the operation. And following that briefing meeting at the CHP assembly, the person of the party showed his own miserable character one more time, a character we already are acquainted with now. Last year uh, uh, at AK Party meeting, I mentioned one thing to bring the attention of many to CHP's failure in local administration. And he went so beyond, so far to link that to Gara operations. And there is nothing to even bother to mention about what he said. And now on the TVs, we have citizens watching, and I wanted to remind our citizens of those facts. My great nation, as a country, on one hand, we're fighting terror, and on the other, we are fighting against a pandemic. But we also run all the activities that will ensure a further development and thriving of Turkey. With the guidance, under the guidance of technology, many technicians, scientists, engineers will be writing the new technology story of Turkey. That's why we hold tightly on our national technology movement, and in research and development and in innovation, we look for our new future. And national technology, as a part of our national technology movement, the National Space Program was announced last year. And in this regard, we have come up with our roadmap and 10-year targets, goals with our people. On this path, we believe, and as long as we are committed, stay fully committed to our goals, there will be nothing that would stand in between us and our targets. And thanks to the infrastructure investments we have made over the past years, we have a highly qualified human capital and high capacities and capabilities of engineering and designing. We are able to self produce our own satellites, our systems, and test them and launch them. We are among the few in the world. We have our sight set on to the space. We have passionate young people, passionate children who have such a desire and enthusiasm. As long as we keep our excitement as such, sending a Turkish scientist into the space is just a few steps ahead of us, believe me. This vision of our country for the space studies has been met and welcomed with joy by our nation, which, of course, in turn has made us very happy. But on the other, there are some who cannot share the joy of our nation, who do not feel proud of the success of our country. We are talking about the Milkway, but they are only engaged in smaller things. Such a visionary movement of our country was welcomed and appreciated by the rest of the world, but those other people in our country sank so low to only label it as a dream and tried their best to make it dwindle. But God willingly, we will never listen to them and continue to do the best all the time. One of the most important steps we have taken in this regard is the local automotive manufacturing process of our country. Last year, the facility groundbroken for is now still under construction, and day and night the construction is ongoing. Uh, Many columns, iron structures have been erected, and the main structure of the plant has now been constructed. And we also have taken one more step forward, and we have now a cooperation with the Meteorological Authority of uh, our country, and the cars to be manufactured will be using the data that will be transferred from the authority to the vehicle using artificial intelligence. And once you have such a car, such a vehicle, you will be able to upload any technology that you wish. This vehicle is the local, the indigenous, and national automobile of our country. And if it had not been for this capacity, we would have not have had such a chance of using artificial intelligence to the full extent. And my great nation, Turkey, walks on its path very strongly in production. Last week, the industrial production data for the last quarter of 2020 was declared, and according to the report, going beyond expectations, our industrial production registered a 9% of growth. That's why in the last quarter of 2020, we have managed to become the G the country that registered the highest growth among G20 countries. And this positive growth also showed that Turkey has the potential to grow its capacity even further, even in the face of the pandemic. If you remember, IMF made a forecast that Turkey would shrink in its economy by 5%, but now IMF reports and updated its former estimation that Turkey would grow by 1.2%. And for this reason, I would like to thank to and congratulate all farmers and producers. Despite the difficulties due to the pandemic, our supply chain, let alone meeting the needs of our own country, showed efforts that would meet the needs of many across the world. And last year, $169 billion was the volume of our global export, and we, in terms of global direct investments, have attracted almost $8 billion worth of global direct investment in the capital markets. In terms of sales of houses and automobiles, we have left a very promising year behind. And this performance of our economy during the last year hopefully will increase the level of trust felt for our country in the post-pandemic period. And during the first 40 days of this year, the electricity generation and consumption in our industrial organized zones increased 3% on a year-on-year basis and gave us signals for further improvement. And as more vaccines are administered, we expect the foreign demand for our country to increase in the upcoming periods. Of course, there are some who have been very negatively impacted by the pandemic, including shop owners and SMEs. But so far, we have provided almost 311 billion liras worth of financial incentives and assistance. Only within the scope of a social protection shield, we provided cash financial assistance, unemployment subsidies, and normalization subsidies. And within the framework of all those, only the resource which allocated for our nation now stands at 53 billion liras. And the cash financial assistance has now been prolonged until March 17. And we also have two good news for our farmers about fertilizers. Mr. Kamal was very excited about those good news. The subsidy, the financial assistance for our farmers in terms of the fertilizer supply. We will be supplying 2 times more of what we have done. 8 liras was the financial assistance for grains, rye, and other organic products, and now the financial assistance is 16. For organic fertilizer users, the 10 lira per acre financial assistance also has been doubled up to 20 liras. So these financial assistance payments will be delivered to our farmers and transacted to their accounts in a season when they need such financial assistance the most, which is the spring season. And we will continue to support them more. And on the other hand, in line with the course of the pandemic, we have been taking steps for normalization as we still adhere to the measures of the pandemic. And gradual face-to-face education news was already shared. Uh, and due to the heavy snow fall ongoing right now, face-to-face education has been maybe postponed, but in line with the course of the pandemic and the weather conditions, face-to-face education will start, and we have had the chance to address those matters during our presidential cabinet meeting. In some cities, the current conditions are very promising, but in some other cities, the course of the pandemic is still uh, alarming. That's why we will be standing hand in hand and altogether curb the spread of this virus. The vaccine studies are ongoing, and so far more than 5 million have now been uh, vaccinated. This is a unique, indeed, campaign considering per capita vaccine in the world. And for the first group uh, to be vaccinated, we have already started administrating the second jobs of the vaccines. We have made all the necessary contacts for the vaccines, and the supply is now possible gradually. We also closely follow the local vaccine studies, and in line with the evaluations we have made, I would like to share some issues about the pandemic and pandemic related measures. March will be the month during which we will pave a lot of way for vaccination. And in this regard, in line with the criteria of the Ministry of Healthcare, the cities will be divided into 4 groups, and as of March, gradual normalization process will start, and the cities will be classified according to the number of vaccines administered and also the number of cases reported. And we will classify them as risky, moderately risky, less risky, or non-risky cities. This way, restaurants and cafes, uh, coffee shops, uh, which have paused their operations, will be provided with a new road map, and things will be clarified for them in the upcoming days. This goes the same for education. According to the number of cases in cities, the cities will be classified and the actions will be taken accordingly. The number of the daily reported cases, positive cases, and the number of vaccines administered will tell us how we will lift the measures gradually in specific cities and in those group of cities. And our wish, of course, is that we hopefully will curb the spread of this virus and eradicate it. But the more our citizens adhere to the rules and the measures, the faster the normalization calendar, normalization agenda will be put into practice. Turkey really has been a country that successfully managed this pandemic, and being more patient and being a bit more careful, we will be no longer, hopefully, be posed with the threat of this trouble of pandemic. I ask for the support of my nation once again for this, and I pray that God is with us and helps us and guides us. I once again would like to salute you all with love and respect. And now I also, using this opportunity, wish for a quick recovery to all those who have been infected with COVID-19. I wish a quick recovery to them all. I pray for the mercy of God on the souls of those who lost their lives due to the pandemic. And I would like to hope that we all stay in health. Thank you very much.